So, one of the things that truly inspires me the most in life is airplanes. And I am somebody that kind of gets hyped about a lot of things that I really love. Um, and one of those things where like it almost really, when choosing just one thing to think is the coolest is almost like, choosing your favorite child. You can't. And if you had to choose my favorite, it would probably just be science in general. Even if science had never produced something so marvelous as a flying machine, I would be infatuated with the scientific method and the knowledge that it gives us. But I'd be lying if I said airplanes were not my favorite use case for engineering, and they're just fantastic, and it's it's literally a dream come true, right? Being able to soar through the air like the birds. And man, I can't believe I have ever been lucky enough to just be on an airplane, let alone the points in my life where I've been lucky enough to actually fly one. And I've already talked in the past about how the FAA are stupid and I can't fly an airplane. Um, it's not just me, flying is a privilege in general, not a right, and maintaining an FAA medical certificate is difficult for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And I unfortunately am not able to. I have never had an issue with my actual license, but um, you have to have both a valid license and a valid medical certificate to fly. And just, yeah, I've never had an issue with my flying, but I, don't have a medical certificate, so it is what it is. But I don't know. I, this channel kind of just consists of me talking about whatever I want to, and probably one of the things I'll go into more detail on in the future is airplanes and how they work in possible preparation for being able to fly again if I ever get the chance, because I might have a full-time job that pays enough that, you know, it would be you can't necessarily get your medical certificate back by just throwing money at the problem, but you can try. And I might be able to. In the meantime, I have, these things, remote controlled airplanes, which are a lot of fun and I highly recommend. These days, you can get into the hobby for very little money, actually. You can buy a little electrically powered park flyer like this one for with everything you need for actually as little as $100. Probably want to spend more like 200 to 300 to get something that's going to be a little bit more reliable and a little bit more capable. I don't recommend this one. This is would not be a terrible first airplane. It does look cool because it's a model of an A-10 Warthog, but it handles all right. But the flying speed is a little bit fast. Not too bad, but I would recommend a different trainer than that one. So I don't know. I I scratch the itch a little bit with model airplanes. I scratch the itch a little bit with playing Kerbal Space. Kerbal Space Program is mostly about space, but you can build airplanes and they're fun to fly. And I do sometimes fly flight simulators too, which are also fun. But man, there's nothing quite like the real thing. It's just so amazing. Like there's a reason that if anybody watches my shorts that I upload either to this channel or to my shorts channel, you'll notice that like 90% of them are just me plane spotting, because I never get sick of just going by an airport and just sitting at either the approach end of the runway and watching landings or the departure end of the runway and watching takeoffs, and it's spectacular every single time. It's I mean, how can you not be amazed? It's literally flying. How can you not be amazed? It's like I said, with the thing of sort of choosing between your children, like, and also mentioning Kerbal Space Program, it's the other thing is like between airplanes and spacecraft, or aircraft and spacecraft, I guess. Which do you prefer? And that's a heart wrenching choice that I don't want to make. I want both, which is, in Kerbal Space Program you can play with both, although it's optimized more for space. I think flying an airplane is more fun than flying a spacecraft, but that's because when you flying a spacecraft, you don't actually fly it, right? Once you're in orbit, the engines are almost always shut down and you just float, more or less passively. And the astronauts on the International Space Station don't spend any of their time, you know, calculating correction maneuvers or anything like that. They spend their time just doing scientific research on the station, which is fantastic, and I'm sure it's a lot of fun to float around, and it must be, and the views from space are spectacular. I actually think the views from an airplane are even more spectacular because you can get in close and see things from the way a bird would see them, where you can see much more detail than you can see from space, but while still being able to soar around and see things from a vantage point like you would on top of a mountain. But, if I ever get the chance to fly into outer space, I'm definitely not going to say no. I just think I would probably have more fun flying something like an F-15 up to 50, 60,000 feet and seeing the Earth from that vantage point. So I don't know. I think I'd like at some point to do a deeper dive into airplanes and how they work. You know, this channel isn't a particularly formal endeavor, so I kind of reserve the right to do whatever I feel like, within reason. I'd be lying, though, if I said I don't get dopamine from people watching my content. And, I'm not, obsessed with any sort of numbers metric insofar as, trying to build an audience of any particular size. In fact, if I want to keep my career running smoothly, it would, I really want to keep this channel, not like a secret, but I want to stay small enough that I don't get noticed by the powers that be and create any problems for myself. So, I don't know. I do love the smell of jet fuel in the morning, though. And, man, if you have any interest at all, I recommend, number one, getting into RC flying, and number two, actually going to find your local flight school, and you can take an introductory flight lesson for usually not very much money. Getting an actual pilot's license will usually cost like $5,000 to $10,000. It's not cheap. You can get a little bit of a discount, like the flight school that they had at my university that I went to. Wasn't a part of the university, but the airport was owned by the university, and the flight school was technically independently operated. Anyways, so you can find it. You can shuffle around and find it for a little less, but generally it's going to cost several $1,000s. But you can go take an introductory lesson for very little, and you can pick up one of these for also very little. And man, it's just an absolutely spectacular experience, and I cannot recommend it enough. And I'll never get sick of just seeing airplanes go overhead. It's amazing. I hope the birds don't mind that we're sharing the airspace with them. I guess in that case it's actually better to stay up at a higher altitude where we're only going to bother them if we're down in close to the terrain. Which there's already rules that you should stay 1,000 feet vertically from structures on the ground, anyways. So yeah. Go fly if you can, and thanks for watching.